Hello, I'm Aaron Schubach, head of the Colorado Springs School. Welcome to this brief presentation on social and emotional learning at CSS. Research has shown that emotions matter a great deal in both children and adults. Emotions influence learning, attention and memory, decision-making, the quality of relationships, and all elements of health. Nationally, internationally, and locally, we've seen some alarming trends in emotional health of young people and adults. A 50-year research project at UCLA recently showed that their incoming students had their lowest self-reported emotional and mental health in 30 years. Anxiety now surpasses depression as the most common mental health diagnosis amongst college students. Recent research about emotional health amongst young people also shows that 9.5% of freshmen surveyed in 2014 frequently felt depressed during their freshman year, up a significant portion from 5 years before. 34.6% felt overwhelmed by schoolwork and other commitments, up a significant portion from the previous measurement. Suicide has been steadily rising amongst children aged 10 to 14 and the rate has doubled in the United States from 2007 to 2014. Now, the rate of suicide death has surpassed that of car accident fatalities amongst middle school students. All of these alarming national trends are things to bear in mind as we consider what we can do as educators, parents, coaches, teachers, siblings to support the young people in our lives. Emotional intelligence is a term we hear about a lot, and I want to offer two definitions here, one clinical and one a little bit more practical. The first one, emotional intelligence is the ability to monitor one's own and others' feelings, to discriminate among them, and to use this information to guide one's thinking and action. It's a great definition, very 360. Mark Brackett, founder of the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence, has a great definition on the bottom part of the slide. Emotional intelligence is learning to be smart about your emotional life. It's using your emotions to achieve your goals. And it's a great framework for us as we think about what emotional intelligence is and what skills comprise it and how can we encourage or teach those skills amongst young people. So the RULER acronym, created by the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence, stands for recognizing, understanding, labeling, expressing, and regulating emotions. So the first three letters there, recognizing, understanding, and labeling, are what we're going to talk about when we get into the first of the four anchors of the RULER program. The research is clear. Students with greater emotional intelligence have some increased outcomes, both in school and with peer relationships. Let me explain. They're prone to have less anxiety, less depression, less likely to abuse alcohol and drugs, less likely to be aggressive, and less likely to be the victims of aggressive behavior. Have greater leadership skills. Obviously, leadership is a broad category of skills, but they tend to have greater leadership skills, be more attentive in school, and perform better academically. The RULER program, designed by Yale and implemented at CSS 2 years ago, has a very particular and concrete approach to what schools and teachers, coaches, literally everyone with a face, can do to encourage students to reflect on their emotional life. Let's take a look at those anchors. There are four, starting with the charter, going to the mood meter, the meta moment, and the blueprint. We'll start with the charter. A charter is a student-created in conversation with their peers, agreement about the types of ways students would like to feel and the things that they are going to agree to do internally and externally to promote those feelings. At CSS, we've implemented the charter pre-K through 12th grade, and the ownership that students feel in promoting the values that they want to see, dialoguing with others, and holding students, other students and themselves accountable to a set of behaviors has been quite positive. Here you can see the students' names all around our kindergarten class charter. If you look at the bottom, when we do not feel happy at school, we will cheer each other up, give a high five, invite others to play, and talk to teachers and friends. All great strategies. The first grade class charter has been signed with handprints. Third grade charter ends with, we'll take care of ourselves, we'll take care of others, and we'll take care of our classroom. Certainly positive things created by students to support the way that they want to act and the way they want to feel. Looking at the mood meter, when we talk about recognizing, expressing, labeling emotions, the mood meter gives children a vocabulary to be able to understand how they feel and express it in concrete vocabulary. On the left-hand side, you can see energy going from low to high, and on the bottom side, you can see pleasantness going from unpleasant to pleasant. So we can see a child who would label themselves being in blue is going to feel both bad and extraordinarily tired, where a child who would put themselves on the extreme yellow part of the quadrant, the extreme upper right, would be feeling highly energetic and highly positive. Give you some examples. Ruler has created a mood meter app that can provide kids with words that they can use to self-label how they feel at any given time. Some of these words are tremendous for building vocabulary, and they're also tremendous for asking kids to reflect on the nature of their emotional life. Here we have kids in our pre-K program who are plotting themselves on the mood meter. These students have been asked to make the facial expression that goes along with their quadrant. We can see yellow on the right and blue on the left. This child is very, very red. The excitement of being high up on a climbing wall leads to high pleasantness and high excitement for sure. Working together can often cause students to experience stress, anxiety, miscommunication, overcommunication. The meta moment strategy has 6 prompts, all beginning with the letter S, that can ask students to go through a process to take them towards a good decision. Number 1, something happens. There's a sense response to it. Sometimes that's promoting an extreme emotional reaction. It can be your initial knee-jerk reaction happening in step 2. The meta moment asks students to pause in step 3. Imagine not what the greatest person in the world would do, but what your best self might do under these circumstances. Strategize to achieve an outcome that's preferred, and make a choice. So step 6 is to succeed. The last charter, the last anchor of the 4 anchors is the blueprint. And what you can see here is, often this is something that we'll use when students are having a disagreement, but we'll ask a student to go through a scripted conversation to ask how the individual feels and how others might have felt. What the cause of the feeling was in the individual and what caused the other person's feelings. And lastly, how did I express and regulate my feelings, and how did the other individual express and regulate their feelings? So you can see the ruler skills are progressing on the left-hand side. The last part, a reflection on the experience, is what could I have done to handle the situation better, and what can I do now? We find that some common vocabulary amongst all of our educators to ask these questions and prompt growth among students can be a really productive way to get students to think about imagining the next situation to have a better outcome. I'd like to talk about some of our school-wide accomplishments. In the last 2 years, every grade level in the school, every division of faculty, and even the entire faculty as a group have created charters which they've revisited and referred to. So there can be a common vocabulary beyond just the rule book about how students' behavior can have an impact on others and how we can make choices to have the best possible impact. We've also introduced the mood meter school-wide. Specifically, in our children's school, we use the mood meter to look at the self, others, situation, and even develop empathy through literature. We've built upon the idea of the meta moment through the concept of a think sheet. We've emphasized the work of Carol Dweck on growth mindsets, asking kids to think about their best self as a roadmap to who they want to be and encouraging them to think about their character as fluid rather than fixed. We've introduced the concept in 21st century friends groups to talk about mindfulness, essentially giving kids a tool to how to regulate their emotions by some very simple practices on meditation and being present. And we've introduced a common vocabulary. In middle school, in our advisory program, students have had lessons on the mood meter introduced. We've done check-ins as we go through the course of our days, weeks, and through the school year. Again, we've looked at the concept of characters in literature through the mood meter, trying to develop empathy. One of the points here that I touched upon before is we've used a blueprint to help students resolve conflict. In the high school, the meta moment seems to be a concept that's most definitively embraced by our students. Adolescence is a time of many choices, many emotions. It's a complicated social environment, and many of our students have benefited from the idea of pausing and thinking about the pathways to success. Ruler anchors, we think, have been most helpful in high school when used by a teacher to resolve conflict or to help students process challenging situations. I'd like to close the presentation by talking a little bit about lessons learned. We feel that having an organized system attuned to social and emotional learning seems to be a benefit at CSS. We see a positive traction amongst our community in terms of thinking about emotions and our emotional selves being a tool that empowers students. Obviously, younger students are more receptive to some of these ideas. We know going forward that faculty will need to continue to educate our community about the Ruler program and its specifics and the larger goals of our social and emotional learning program. So we need ongoing training and professional development. The last bullet point here I think is really important. The journey is more important than the destination. I don't think we will ever get to a point where a great school with supportive teachers, great partnership with parents, and an organized system of dealing with emotions, academic support, counselors, all that will make adolescence be a completely tranquil time. We know that having the tools in our toolbox equip us to do our work well. We're not under the false impression that we will crack the code of the emotional world, but we're very, very pleased to have broadened the number of strategies that we're bringing to the table with our students. Lastly, these are the lingering questions that we're asking ourselves as we move this program forward. How can we keep it fresh over time? How can we support faculty as they teach and mentor our students and athletes? How can we pass ownership on to our students? At what age does a concrete lingo and specific terminology begin to turn students off as opposed to empower them? At what age does a social emotional learning program or a ruler program do its best work in an incognito format? And lastly, perhaps most importantly, how should we partner with parents? How can we be a resource to parents who are interested in learning more about this program, share information with our current parents about the types of lessons kids are learning at school, and how can we move this program to its best possible outcome? Thanks for listening. Again, this is Aaron Schubach, head of school at the Colorado Springs School, and I certainly appreciate your time. Take care.